Captain Sarah Mitchell adjusted her desert camouflage uniform as she stepped off the transport helicopter onto the dusty tarmac of Forward Operating Base Redemption. The Afghan sun blazed overhead, and the familiar smell of diesel fuel and sand filled her nostrils. After 18 months deployed across 3 different combat zones, she was used to the hostile environment, but this assignment felt different. She wasn't here as part of a regular Army unit this time. The base bustled with activity as soldiers, Marines, and contractors moved equipment and supplies. Sarah noticed the curious glances from passing personnel. Some looked surprised to see a female captain walking alone toward the command center, while others simply nodded respectfully at her rank insignia. As she approached the main building, a tall man in navy dress blues emerged from the entrance. His chest displayed an impressive array of ribbons and medals, and the 4 stars on his collar immediately identified him as Admiral James Harrison, the Joint Special Operations Command leader she'd been ordered to report to. Admiral Harrison stopped mid-conversation with his aide when he spotted Sarah approaching. His expression shifted from professional courtesy to barely concealed amusement. Sarah could see him taking in her appearance, noting her relatively young age, her slight build, and most obviously, her gender. Well, Admiral Harrison said loudly enough for nearby personnel to hear. They sent us a captain. Tell me, Captain. He paused, glancing at her name tape. Mitchell, what exactly makes the Army think they can contribute to our operation here? Sarah maintained her composure, snapping to attention and delivering a crisp salute. Sir, Captain Mitchell reporting as ordered for Operation Desert Shield integration, sir. The Admiral returned her salute with exaggerated formality, then crossed his arms. Integration, you say? And what's your specialty, Captain? Logistics? Communications? Please don't tell me they think you're qualified for tactical operations. Several junior officers had gathered nearby, drawn by the Admiral's raised voice. Sarah felt their eyes on her as she replied, Sir, I'm assigned as a precision marksman advisor and battlefield intelligence specialist. Admiral Harrison actually laughed out loud. A sniper? They sent me a female captain who thinks she's a sniper? He shook his head dramatically. This is exactly what's wrong with the modern military. Too much political correctness, not enough common sense. One of the junior officers shifted uncomfortably, but none dared interrupt their commanding officer. Sarah stood perfectly still, her face betraying no emotion despite the humiliation burning in her chest. Tell me, Captain, Admiral Harrison continued, his voice dripping with condescension. How many confirmed kills do you have? And please, spare me any training range stories. We're talking about real combat here, life and death situations that require split-second decisions and nerves of steel. Sarah looked directly into the Admiral's eyes. Sir, that information is classified above your current briefing level for this operation. The Admiral's expression darkened. Excuse me? Are you suggesting that there's something I don't have clearance for regarding my own operation? No, sir, Sarah replied calmly. I'm stating that my operational history requires additional security protocols before disclosure. I was instructed to discuss specifics only after proper verification procedures are completed. Admiral Harrison studied her for a long moment, clearly annoyed by her professional response. Fine, we'll play your little games. But let me be crystal clear, Captain. This is a Navy SEAL operation. We don't have time to babysit Army personnel who think they belong in special operations. You'll be assigned to rear support duties where you can't interfere with real operators. With respect, sir, Sarah said, my orders specify integration with forward tactical teams for precision support and target identification. Your orders, Admiral Harrison said with a sneer, are about to be modified. I don't care what some desk jockey in Washington thinks this operation needs. I decide how personnel are utilized, and I'm not risking SEAL lives to accommodate political quota filling. He turned to his aide, a young Navy lieutenant who looked increasingly uncomfortable. Lieutenant Rodriguez, escort Captain Mitchell to the rear logistics area. Find her something useful to do that won't get anyone killed. As they walked away from the command center, Lieutenant Rodriguez kept glancing at Sarah nervously. Finally, he spoke quietly. "Ma'am, the Admiral, he's not usually like this." "Well, actually, he kind of is, but this seemed personal somehow." Sarah nodded, but said nothing. She understood exactly what had happened. Admiral Harrison had made assumptions based on her appearance and gender, then doubled down when she refused to be intimidated. It wasn't the first time she'd encountered this kind of prejudice, and it wouldn't be the last. The logistics area was a sprawling complex of warehouses and maintenance facilities at the rear of the base, far from the tactical operations center where real decisions were made. Lieutenant Rodriguez led her to a small office where a harried-looking supply sergeant was juggling multiple computer screens. "Sergeant Williams," the lieutenant said, "this is Captain Mitchell. The Admiral wants her assigned to rear support duties." Sergeant Williams looked up from his computers and immediately recognized the awkwardness of the situation. A captain outranked him significantly, but the Admiral's orders were clear. "Yes, sir. Captain, I guess you'll be helping with inventory management and supply coordination." Sarah accepted the assignment without complaint. She spent the rest of the day learning the base's supply systems and reviewing personnel manifests. As she worked, she noticed several things that others had missed. Equipment requests that didn't match unit deployment patterns. Ammunition requisitions that exceeded normal operational requirements. Vehicle maintenance logs that suggested unauthorized modifications. That evening, she sat in the small quarters she'd been assigned, reviewing the intelligence briefings she'd been cleared to read. The operation was more complex than Admiral Harrison had let on during their encounter. Multiple high-value targets were operating in the region, and recent intelligence suggested a major terrorist operation was being planned. As she studied the target profiles and geographical data, Sarah began to understand why she'd really been sent to this base. Her reputation in certain classified circles wasn't connected to her gender or her rank. It was connected to a very specific skill set that few people possessed and fewer still could execute under extreme pressure. 3 soft knocks on her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Lieutenant Rodriguez standing in the hallway, looking around nervously. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I thought you should know. We received updated intelligence tonight. The Admiral is planning a major operation for tomorrow night, but something about the target location doesn't match what our forward scouts reported." Sarah studied the young officer's face. "Why are you telling me this, Lieutenant?" Rodriguez hesitated, then pulled out a folded paper. "Because I looked up your service record, ma'am. The unclassified parts, anyway. And I think the Admiral made a serious mistake today." Sarah took the paper and unfolded it. It contained partial details of her previous assignments, but even the limited information painted a picture very different from what Admiral Harrison had assumed. Multiple combat deployments, specialized training schools, commendations for actions that couldn't be fully described due to classification levels. "Lieutenant," she said carefully, "what exactly do you think you know?" "I think," Rodriguez said quietly, "that whoever sent you here knows something the Admiral doesn't. And I think tomorrow night's operation might depend on skills that have nothing to do with your rank or gender." Sarah folded the paper and handed it back to him. "I appreciate your concern, Lieutenant, but I suggest you focus on your own duties and let command handle operational decisions." After he left, Sarah returned to studying the intelligence reports with renewed focus. If Lieutenant Rodriguez had figured out even part of the truth about her background, others might soon follow. The question was whether Admiral Harrison would swallow his pride and listen to reason before his prejudices put his SEALs in unnecessary danger. Outside her window, she could see the lights of the Tactical Operations Center where real planning was taking place. Tomorrow would determine whether her true capabilities would remain hidden in the logistics warehouse, or whether circumstances would force Admiral Harrison to confront the reality of who he'd actually dismissed so carelessly. The next morning brought chaos to forward operating base redemption. Sarah was reviewing supply manifests when the base alarm system blared to life, followed immediately by the distinctive whistle of incoming mortar rounds. She dove under the heavy wooden desk as explosions rocked the logistics compound. Through the small window, she could see smoke rising from multiple impact sites across the base. Personnel ran between buildings, seeking cover and establishing defensive positions. The attack was coordinated and precise, targeting key infrastructure points that suggested detailed intelligence about the base layout. Sergeant Williams burst through the office door, his face streaked with dust and sweat. "Captain, we're taking heavy fire from the eastern ridge. They've got our supply routes pinned down, and the main communication array is damaged." Sarah grabbed her gear and followed him outside. The sound of automatic weapons fire echoed across the compound as defenders returned fire toward the distant hills. She could see muzzle flashes from multiple positions along the ridgeline, indicating a well-planned ambush. "Where's Admiral Harrison?" she asked as they moved toward the command bunker. "Tactical Operations Center," Williams replied, pointing toward the heavily fortified building at the center of the base. "But the approach is completely exposed to sniper fire from those hills." As if to emphasize his point, a bullet cracked past them, sending both soldiers scrambling for better cover behind a concrete barrier. Sarah studied the trajectory and quickly identified the shooter's likely position among the rocks above. Lieutenant Rodriguez appeared from around the corner, breathing heavily and carrying a field radio. "Captain Mitchell, the Admiral is requesting all available personnel to report to the TOC for emergency coordination." "How many casualties so far?" Sarah asked. "3 wounded, no Kia yet, but they've got us effectively trapped. Any movement toward the command center draws immediate sniper fire." The Admiral is frustrated. They made their way carefully through covered approaches toward the Tactical Operations Center. The building's thick walls provided protection, but reaching it required crossing several open areas under direct observation from the hills. Inside the TOC, Admiral Harrison was shouting orders over multiple radio channels while studying a large map display. His earlier arrogance had been replaced by focused intensity as he coordinated the defense. Several SEAL team leaders clustered around the map, pointing at various positions and discussing response options. "Sir," Lieutenant Rodriguez announced, "Captain Mitchell reporting as requested." Admiral Harrison glanced up from the map, his expression showing annoyance at the interruption. "Captain, I need you to coordinate with Sergeant Williams on ammunition resupply. We're burning through ammo faster than expected, and the supply routes are compromised." Sarah stepped closer to the map display, studying the enemy positions marked by the forward observers. "Sir, permission to speak freely about the tactical situation?" "Captain, unless you have ammunition counts to report, I don't have time for your input. This is a special operations response, not a supply chain discussion." "Sir," Sarah persisted, "the enemy positions indicate detailed reconnaissance of our base layout. They're not randomly attacking. They're specifically targeting our response capabilities and trying to prevent reinforcement of the eastern perimeter." Admiral Harrison looked up sharply. "Are you attempting to provide tactical analysis, Captain? Because last I checked, your expertise was in inventory management." One of the SEAL team leaders, a grizzled Master Chief with multiple combat tours, studied the map more carefully. "Admiral, she might have a point. The targeting pattern does suggest they know our standard defensive protocols." "Master Chief Thompson," the Admiral said curtly, "I appreciate your input, but I don't need a supply officer second-guessing our operational assessment." Sarah could see the frustration building among the SEAL operators. They understood the tactical situation, but were constrained by the Admiral's dismissive attitude toward her input. She decided to take a different approach. "Sir, I'm not questioning your tactical decisions, but the ammunition resupply situation is critical, and I've identified potential security issues with our supply chain that might be relevant to this attack." Admiral Harrison finally gave her his full attention. "What kind of security issues?" Yesterday's inventory review showed several discrepancies in equipment requests and personnel access logs. Someone with detailed knowledge of our operations has been gathering intelligence about our capabilities and defensive positions. Master Chief Thompson leaned forward. "What kind of discrepancies?" Sarah pulled out a folded paper with her notes. Ammunition requests that don't match unit deployment schedules. Vehicle maintenance logs indicating unauthorized modifications. And personnel access records showing base layout reconnaissance that correlates directly with today's attack pattern. The Admiral studied her notes with growing concern. Why didn't you report this yesterday? Sir, I attempted to establish proper reporting protocols, but I was assigned to logistics support rather than intelligence analysis duties. The weight of his earlier dismissal hung heavy in the room. Admiral Harrison had been so focused on his prejudices that he'd ignored potentially critical intelligence information. Master Chief Thompson spoke up quietly. Admiral, if Captain Mitchell identified advanced reconnaissance activities, we might be dealing with a more sophisticated enemy than we initially assessed. Before Admiral Harrison could respond, the radio crackled with urgent reports from the perimeter teams. TOC, this is Eagle 2. We've got movement in the Western Valley. Looks like a secondary force trying to flank our position. Request immediate support. The Admiral turned back to the map, his jaw tight with tension. The enemy wasn't just conducting a harassment attack. They were executing a complex battle plan designed to overwhelm the base's defenses through coordinated pressure from multiple directions. Master Chief, deploy your teams to reinforce the western approach. We can't let them establish a crossfire situation. Sir, Thompson replied, we're already stretched thin on the eastern perimeter. If we redeploy now, we'll create gaps in our primary defensive line. Sarah studied the map display, noting the terrain features and likely approach routes. Sir, the enemy appears to be trying to force us into a defensive choice between protecting our primary position and preventing flanking maneuvers. Admiral Harrison shot her an irritated look. Captain, unless you have a solution rather than an observation, please coordinate the ammunition resupply as ordered. Actually, sir, I do have a solution, but it requires utilizing assets that aren't currently assigned to defensive operations. The Admiral paused his radio coordination. What assets? Sarah pointed to a specific location on the map. There's a concealed observation post approximately 800 meters northeast of the main enemy position. A single precision shooter position there could eliminate the enemy's command element and disrupt their coordination. Master Chief Thompson studied the location she'd indicated. That's a difficult shot, Captain. Long range, elevated target, multiple environmental factors. And the approach to that position is completely exposed to enemy observation. Yes, Master Chief. It would require someone with advanced precision shooting capabilities and extensive fieldcraft training. Admiral Harrison looked at her suspiciously. Are you suggesting we risk a SEAL sniper on what amounts to a suicide mission based on your amateur tactical assessment? No, sir. I'm suggesting that the mission requires specific skills that might be available from currently underutilized personnel. The room fell quiet as the implication of her words sank in. Admiral Harrison studied her face, beginning to understand that his earlier assumptions about Captain Mitchell might have been seriously flawed. Captain, he said slowly, exactly what qualifications do you possess for precision shooting operations? Before Sarah could respond, another urgent radio call interrupted the conversation. TOC, Eagle 2 is taking heavy casualties. We need immediate support or we're going to lose the western perimeter. Time was running out, and Admiral Harrison faced a choice between his pride and his mission. The question was whether he would continue to dismiss the capabilities of the officer he'd humiliated, or whether he would finally listen to what she'd been trying to tell him since her arrival. Admiral Harrison stared at the tactical display as red markers indicated increasing enemy pressure from multiple directions. The sound of automatic weapons fire grew more intense, and radio reports painted a desperate picture of defenders struggling to maintain their positions. Captain Mitchell, he said finally, his voice tight with controlled tension, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. Can you make that shot? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Sir, I can make the shot, but I need proper equipment and authorization to access restricted operational areas. Master Chief Thompson stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, What aren't you telling us about Captain Mitchell's background? Before Admiral Harrison could respond, Lieutenant Rodriguez burst through the TOC entrance, his uniform torn and dusty. Sir, we've lost contact with Eagle 3 on the northern perimeter. Last transmission indicated they were being overrun by superior numbers. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. Admiral Harrison looked at the map, then at Sarah, his earlier arrogance replaced by the cold calculation of a combat commander facing impossible odds. Master Chief, escort Captain Mitchell to the armory. Get her whatever equipment she needs for a precision shooting mission. He paused, swallowing his pride. Captain, I'm authorizing you for immediate tactical deployment. But understand this. If you can't deliver what you're promising, good people are going to die because I trusted your assessment. Sarah nodded curtly. Understood, sir. I'll need a spotter, communication equipment, and access to the base's detailed terrain maps. Thompson will assign you a SEAL operator for support. Consider yourself temporarily attached to naval special warfare for the duration of this engagement. As they left the TOC, Master Chief Thompson studied Sarah with professional curiosity. Captain, I've been in special operations for 22 years. I've seen a lot of people talk big about their shooting abilities. But what you're suggesting isn't just about marksmanship. That position requires advanced infiltration skills and the ability to operate independently under extreme pressure. Sarah checked her watch. Master Chief, every minute we spend discussing my qualifications is another minute the enemy has to consolidate their positions. Can you assign me a spotter and get me to the armory, or should I proceed independently? Thompson smiled grimly. I like your attitude, Captain. Let's see if your skills match your confidence. The base armory was a heavily secured facility containing specialized weapons and equipment normally reserved for SEAL operations. The master armorer, a grizzled petty officer with decades of experience, looked skeptical when Thompson explained the mission requirements. Sir, we got a Barrett .50 caliber system that would be appropriate for the range and conditions, but it's a specialized weapon that requires extensive training and experience. Sarah examined the rifle carefully, checking the scope mounting, bolt operation, and overall condition. Her movements were quick and professional, demonstrating familiarity with a weapon system that surprised both SEAL operators. This will work, she said, slinging the rifle and selecting appropriate ammunition. I'll also need a range finder, wind meter, and backup communication equipment. Master Chief Thompson assigned Petty Officer First Class Marcus Webb as her spotter. Webb was a veteran SEAL sniper with multiple combat deployments, and his expression showed skepticism about working with an unknown Army officer. Ma'am, Webb said carefully, no disrespect intended, but this mission is extremely dangerous. The approach to that observation post is over a kilometer of open terrain under enemy observation. Even if we reach the position successfully, the shot itself is at the absolute limit of effective range under combat conditions. Sarah studied the route on the detailed terrain map. Petty Officer Webb, I understand your concerns, but the enemy's command post is directing coordinated fire from multiple positions. If we don't eliminate their coordination capability, this base will be overrun within the hour. As they prepared to leave the armory, Admiral Harrison's voice crackled over the radio. All call signs, be advised that enemy forces have been identified as a professional military unit, not irregular insurgents. Intelligence suggests former Special Forces training and advanced tactical coordination. Adjust your operational expectations accordingly. The revelation that they were facing professional soldiers rather than typical insurgent forces changed the tactical equation significantly. The enemy's sophisticated attack plan and detailed base reconnaissance now made perfect sense. Webb looked at Sarah with new respect. Captain, if you identified their intelligence gathering activities yesterday, you might have prevented this from being much worse. They moved carefully through covered approaches toward the base perimeter. The sound of gunfire was constant now, and smoke from burning equipment created a hazy atmosphere across the compound. Sarah used the smoke for concealment as they approached the fence line where their infiltration would begin. Webb, once we leave the perimeter, we'll be completely on our own. No backup, no extraction support. Are you comfortable with those parameters? The SEAL operator checked his communication equipment and spotting scope. Ma'am, I've done worse with less. But I need to understand what I'm working with here. Your movement and equipment handling suggest training well beyond standard Army requirements. Sarah paused at the fence, studying the terrain ahead. Petty officer, my training background is classified above our current operational clearance. What you need to know is that I can make the shot if you can get me accurate range and wind data. They slipped through a concealed opening in the perimeter fence and began the dangerous journey across open ground toward the elevated observation post. The terrain was rocky and provided minimal concealment, requiring careful movement timing to avoid enemy observation. As they moved, Webb began to understand that Sarah's fieldcraft skills were exceptional. She instinctively chose optimal routes, moved with silent precision, and demonstrated awareness of tactical considerations that impressed the experienced SEAL operator. Halfway to their destination, they received an urgent radio transmission from the TOC. Ghost Team, be advised that enemy forces are preparing for final assault on base positions. Time is critical. Sarah increased their pace, accepting greater exposure risk in exchange for faster movement. The observation post was still 400 meters away, and the enemy's final assault could begin at any moment. Webb studied her through his spotting scope as she navigated a particularly difficult section of terrain. Captain, whoever trained you did an exceptional job. Your movement profile is textbook special operations. As they approached the final approach to their shooting position, Sarah could see the enemy command post in the distance. Several figures moved between covered positions, coordinating the attack through radio communications and visual signals. The shot was going to be challenging even under ideal conditions. At nearly 900 meters with elevation change and variable wind conditions, it would test the limits of both equipment and operator capability. Webb, Sarah said quietly as they settled into the observation post, I need you to understand something before we engage. The shot I'm about to take will likely reveal capabilities that may surprise you. I need your word that operational security will be maintained regarding what you observe. The SEAL operator looked at her curiously. Captain, what exactly am I about to witness? Sarah began setting up the Barrett rifle, adjusting the scope and calculating range and wind factors. You're about to witness why Admiral Harrison was wrong about my qualifications, and why whoever sent me to this base knew exactly what they were doing. Sarah settled into position behind the Barrett .50 caliber rifle, her breathing controlled and steady despite the chaos erupting around the base below. Through her scope, she could clearly observe the enemy command post nestled among the rocks approximately 870 meters away. Three figures moved between positions, directing the coordinated attack on forward operating base redemption. Petty Officer Webb positioned himself beside her with his spotting scope, calculating environmental factors that would affect the long-range shot. Wind is variable, shifting between 7 and 12 miles per hour from the northwest. Temperature is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity approximately 15%. Sarah adjusted her scope settings based on Webb's data, then began studying her targets through the powerful optic. The enemy commander was clearly identifiable by his position and the deference shown by subordinates. He wore no distinctive uniform markings, but his tactical positioning and communication patterns identified him as the primary target. Range 873 meters, Webb confirmed through his spotting equipment. Target is partially concealed behind rock formation. You'll have approximately a 3-second window when he moves to the radio position. Through her earpiece, Sarah could hear the increasingly desperate radio traffic from the base defenders. Eagle 2 is down to 20% ammunition. Request immediate resupply or authorization to withdraw to secondary positions. Admiral Harrison's voice cut through the radio chatter. Negative on withdrawal. Hold your positions. Ghost Team, what's your status? Webb keyed his radio. Ghost team is in position and preparing to engage. Stand by for shot. Sarah controlled her breathing, settling into the mental state required for precision shooting under extreme conditions. The enemy commander moved between covered positions, coordinating attacks through hand signals and radio communications. She would need to time her shot perfectly to catch him during his brief exposure. Webb, I need you to understand something, Sarah said quietly as she tracked the target through her scope. What you're about to observe is classified at levels above routine special operations clearance. This shot represents capabilities that are compartmentalized within very specific programs. The SEAL operator looked at her with growing curiosity. Captain, just how specialized is your background? Before Sarah could respond, the enemy commander emerged from cover and moved toward a radio position mounted on a tripod between two large rocks. The exposure window was exactly as Webb had predicted, approximately 3 seconds before the target would be concealed again. Sarah's breathing slowed to near stillness. Her finger found the trigger, and everything around her seemed to fade except the precise sight picture in her scope. The target moved with professional confidence, unaware that he was being observed by a precision shooter nearly 900 meters away. The rifle bucked against her shoulder with tremendous force, the .50 caliber round leaving the muzzle at over 2,800 feet per second. The massive bullet arced across the valley, fighting wind and gravity during its 2-second flight toward the distant target. Through his spotting scope, Webb watched the round impact with devastating effect. The enemy commander simply disappeared from view, the large caliber bullet striking with such force that his subordinates immediately dove for cover, confused and demoralized by the sudden loss of their leader. Direct hit, Webb confirmed, his voice showing professional admiration. Target is down. Secondary targets are seeking cover and appear to be losing coordination. The effect on the battlefield was immediate and dramatic. Without their commander's coordination, the enemy forces began losing tactical cohesion. Radio intercepts revealed growing confusion among unit leaders who had lost their primary source of direction and communication. Sarah chambered another round and shifted her scope toward a secondary target who was attempting to take control of the radio equipment. The second shot was equally precise, eliminating the backup commander before he could reorganize the attack. Second target down, Webb reported, his voice now carrying unmistakable respect. Captain, that was exceptional shooting under combat conditions. Range, environmental factors, target movement, those were near impossible shots. Through the base communication channel, they could hear the immediate change in defensive reports. TOC, this is Eagle 2. Enemy fire has decreased significantly. They appear to be withdrawing from forward positions. Admiral Harrison's voice crackled through the radio. Ghost Team, confirm your engagement results. We're observing enemy withdrawal across multiple sectors. Webb responded while continuing to observe the enemy positions through his spotting scope. TOC, Ghost Team has eliminated primary and secondary command elements. Enemy forces are losing tactical coordination and beginning organized withdrawal. Sarah continued tracking potential targets through her scope, but the enemy forces were clearly in retreat. The loss of their command structure had broken their ability to maintain coordinated pressure against the base defenses. Webb, Sarah said as she secured her rifle, I need you to make a decision about what you observed here today. My actual qualifications and background are compartmentalized information that could compromise ongoing operations if disclosed inappropriately. The SEAL operator studied her carefully. Captain, I've worked with some of the best snipers in special operations. What you just demonstrated goes beyond normal training and experience. Those shots required skills that are taught in very specific programs to very select personnel. As they prepared to return to the base, Webb noticed something that made him pause. Sarah's equipment handling, her tactical awareness, her movement patterns. Everything suggested training and experience far beyond what her Army captain rank would normally indicate. Ma'am, he said carefully, I think I understand why you were really sent to our base. And I think Admiral Harrison made a serious mistake in his initial assessment. They began the careful movement back toward the base perimeter, using concealment routes that avoided potential enemy observation. The sound of gunfire had decreased significantly, and radio reports confirmed that enemy forces were withdrawing from all contact areas. As they approached the base fence line, Sarah turned to Webb. "Petty officer, what happened today stays between us until proper debriefing procedures can be completed. There are aspects of my background that require specific classification handling." Webb nodded, understanding. "Captain, I've been in special operations long enough to recognize compartmentalized information when I see it. But I think it's time Admiral Harrison learned who he was really dealing with." They entered the base perimeter as the all-clear signal sounded across the compound. Personnel began emerging from defensive positions, and medical teams moved toward areas where casualties had been reported. The immediate threat was over, but questions remained about how the enemy had obtained such detailed intelligence about the base. As they walked toward the Tactical Operations Center for debriefing, Webb looked at Sarah with professional curiosity. "Captain, can I ask you something off the record?" "You can ask, petty officer. Whether I can answer depends on the question." "Ma'am, exactly how long have you been operating at classification levels that most special operations personnel never see?" Sarah paused before responding. "Long enough to understand why someone with my background was sent to assist with this operation, and long enough to know that Admiral Harrison's assumptions about my capabilities were based on incomplete information." As they approached the TOC entrance, Sarah could see Admiral Harrison through the windows, coordinating post-engagement activities and reviewing casualty reports. The time had come for him to learn the truth about the officer he had so casually dismissed based on her rank and gender. The question now was whether he would be able to accept that his prejudices had nearly compromised a critical operation, and whether he could handle learning who Captain Mitchell really was. Admiral Harrison looked up from his casualty reports as Sarah and Petty Officer Webb entered the Tactical Operations Center. The immediate crisis had passed, but the weight of command decisions made under pressure was evident in his expression. Multiple radio channels continued coordinating base security and damage assessment activities. "Ghost Team, report," Admiral Harrison ordered, his voice professionally neutral but his eyes showing barely contained curiosity about the mission's success. Webb stepped forward to deliver the tactical summary. "Sir, mission accomplished. Primary and secondary targets eliminated. Enemy command structure destroyed, resulting in tactical withdrawal of all hostile forces." Master Chief Thompson looked up from his communication equipment with surprise. "Both primary and secondary targets? At that range, under those conditions?" Sarah began disassembling her rifle equipment while Webb continued his report. "Sir, Captain Mitchell's engagement was conducted at 873 meters under variable wind conditions. Both targets were eliminated with single shots, resulting in immediate loss of enemy coordination and rapid withdrawal." Admiral Harrison studied Sarah carefully as she methodically cleaned and stored the Barrett rifle. Her movements were precise and professional, demonstrating familiarity with specialized equipment that extended far beyond basic Army training. "Captain Mitchell," Admiral Harrison said slowly, "I believe we need to discuss your actual qualifications and background. It seems my initial assessment may have been incomplete." Before Sarah could respond, Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with a sealed communication folder. "Admiral, priority message from Joint Special Operations Command. Classification level requires private review." Admiral Harrison opened the folder and began reading. His expression changed dramatically as he progressed through the document, shifting from professional curiosity to genuine shock. He read certain sections multiple times, as if unable to accept what the official communication was telling him. "Captain Mitchell," he said finally, his voice completely different from their first encounter. "According to this communication, you are attached to a program that I've never heard of, with clearance levels that exceed my own operational authority." Sarah secured the last of her equipment before responding. "Sir, I tried to explain yesterday that my background required specific verification procedures before disclosure. Admiral Harrison continued reading the classified communication. It says here that you have been operating under deep cover assignments for the past 3 years, with a mission success rate that... He paused, looking at her with newfound respect. Captain, your actual record is extraordinary. Master Chief Thompson stepped closer, his professional curiosity evident. Admiral, what exactly are we dealing with here? Master Chief, Captain Mitchell is attached to a compartmentalized program that conducts operations I'm not clear to know about. Her cover identity as a routine Army captain was designed to provide operational security for her real mission. Webb looked at Sarah with understanding. That explains the advanced skills and specialized equipment familiarity. You're not really an Army captain at all, are you? Sarah finally spoke, her voice carrying authority that had been carefully concealed during her previous interactions. My actual rank and program affiliation are classified above current operational requirements. What you need to understand is that my assignment to this base was not random. Intelligence indicated that this facility was being targeted by professional military forces, and my mission was to provide protective capabilities. Admiral Harrison set down the communication folder, his earlier arrogance completely replaced by professional respect. Captain, I owe you an apology. My behavior yesterday was unprofessional and based on assumptions that were completely incorrect. Admiral, your reaction was understandable given the information available to you. My cover identity was designed to appear routine to avoid compromising operational security. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked confused by the sudden change in dynamics. Sir, I don't understand. If Captain Mitchell has advanced clearance levels, why was she assigned to logistics duties? Admiral Harrison rubbed his forehead, clearly embarrassed by his earlier decisions. Because I let personal prejudices override professional judgment. I saw a female Army captain and assumed she couldn't contribute to special operations, despite clear orders that should have indicated otherwise. Master Chief Thompson studied the classified communication over Admiral Harrison's shoulder. Sir, according to this document, Captain Mitchell's mission included investigating potential security breaches at this base. Her logistics assignment actually provided perfect access to review personnel and supply records. Sarah nodded confirmation. The intelligence gathering activities I identified yesterday were part of my primary mission. The enemy's detailed knowledge of base operations indicated an internal security compromise that required investigation. Webb suddenly understood the full scope of what had occurred. Captain, you weren't just providing sniper support today. You were conducting a counterintelligence operation while simultaneously defending the base. The attack today was anticipated based on intelligence patterns I observed during my first day here. The enemy's timing and tactical coordination confirmed that they had detailed inside information about our defensive capabilities and response protocols. Admiral Harrison looked at the tactical display, showing the enemy's sophisticated attack pattern, which means someone with access to classified information has been feeding intelligence to hostile forces. Sarah pulled out a folder containing her investigation findings. Sir, my analysis has identified 3 individuals with access patterns consistent with intelligence gathering for external parties. I recommend immediate security isolation and formal counterintelligence investigation. The revelation that the attack had been facilitated by insider intelligence created a new sense of urgency in the Tactical Operations Center. Admiral Harrison realized that the base remained vulnerable as long as the security breach remained unaddressed. Master Chief, implement security protocols for the individuals identified in Captain Mitchell's report. I want them isolated pending formal investigation by appropriate authorities. As Thompson coordinated the security measures, Admiral Harrison turned to Sarah with genuine respect. Captain, I need to understand something. Why didn't you reveal your actual mission and credentials yesterday when I was being difficult? Sarah considered her response carefully. Admiral, my operational security required maintaining cover until circumstances demanded disclosure. Additionally, your initial reactions provided valuable intelligence about base command dynamics that was relevant to my security investigation. Webb looked at Admiral Harrison meaningfully. Sir, Captain Mitchell allowed you to assign her to logistics specifically because it gave her access to investigate the security breach. She was conducting her actual mission while letting you think you were punishing her. The full scope of Admiral Harrison's misjudgment became clear. Not only had he failed to recognize an elite operator, but his prejudiced treatment had actually facilitated her covert investigation by providing perfect access to the information she needed. Captain Mitchell, Admiral Harrison said formally, I want to personally apologize for my unprofessional behavior. Your performance today, both in combat and in counterintelligence operations, was exemplary. I hope you'll accept that my initial reaction does not reflect the values and standards of naval special warfare. Sarah accepted his apology graciously. Admiral, the mission was successful, and the base is secure. That's what matters operationally. As the immediate crisis concluded and normal base operations resumed, Admiral Harrison found himself contemplating the broader implications of his behavior. His assumptions about gender and rank had nearly compromised a critical operation and demonstrated personal biases that had no place in modern military leadership. Master Chief Thompson approached with a final update. Sir, the individuals identified in Captain Mitchell's security investigation have been placed in custody. Initial questioning confirms that classified information was being provided to external contacts in exchange for financial compensation. The counterintelligence operation had been completely successful. The security breach was identified and contained, the enemy attack was defeated, and the base's operational integrity was restored. As Sarah prepared to depart for her next assignment, Admiral Harrison realized that he had learned something far more valuable than tactical procedures. He had confronted his own prejudices and discovered that leadership required looking beyond surface appearances to recognize true capability and professionalism. The lesson would stay with him for the remainder of his career, serving as a constant reminder that assumptions based on rank, gender, or appearance could blind leaders to the exceptional capabilities of the people under their command. Captain Mitchell had demonstrated that true expertise often comes in unexpected packages, and that the best leaders are those who can recognize and utilize talent regardless of their own preconceived notions.